Hi, this is Sarah. Welcome back to Never Out of Books. This is my very, very late May wrap up. I'm sorry about that with the construction going on. There was just nowhere to film where there was light or quiet because guess what? They're doing construction next door, so I couldn't even film outside because there's like backhoes and crap. So anyway, very late, so I apologize too if I don't have a lot to say on these books because I've forgotten a lot of them, to be perfectly honest. It also wasn't a hugely prolific reading month, but I did have a few that were very great reads to me that I really enjoyed, so it was worth it. The first book that I read in May was Delta Force Desire by C.J. Miller. This is a romantic suspense novel in the Harlequin line, and this is about a computer hacker who is working on a very top secret government job, and a terrorist organization threatens her life, and some guy has to come and save her and keep her safe, and she's pretty kick butt. I gave it 3 stars. I don't think it was anything out of the ordinary, but it was an enjoyable read, and I like seeing smart women, so there we go. Then I read Shatter by April Lynn Park. This is the second and final book in this duology, and it's a very interesting concept. Glitter is the first book, so I mean I don't want to spoil it for you, but it is a dystopian-esque book set in Versailles, where Versailles, it's modern day, but Versailles is, you know, people still dress in that Louis Lectour's, you know, pannier skirts and corsets, and like the whole pageantry is there, and yet Versailles is owned by a corporation, which is very interesting, and the people outside the walls dress like normal people. It is little Marie Antoinette going on there, and the protagonist is kind of like an anti-hero. She sells drugs to these people in Versailles to try to overtake this corporation and to get out of things that she wants to do. And it's like a whole thing. So like I found it very, very interesting, this series. But it was a little too dark and gritty for my personal taste. So I ended up giving this book 3 stars. If you don't mind the gritty read and you're kind of intrigued by the whole corsetry, and there's a lot of symbolism and all of that court intrigue and things like that, then you might really enjoy this duology, and it is a duology and they're both out, so that's also a bonus. Then you might like it. It just wasn't quite for me. Then I read If Ever I Should Love You by Kathy Maxwell. I needed a book that started with I. And I believe also there was another book in this series coming out. So this is the first book in the Spinster Heiresses series. I gave this book 3 stars, which is a good book. It was very enjoyable. It had very interesting elements in it, being that she, in the love story, is an alcoholic. So that added a very interesting twist to this whole thing. But I don't know if it was done very well. Again, I read it a while ago, so I can't remember all of the reasons why I didn't like it, but I don't think that his reaction, her husband, or I think they get married right away, or boyfriend, whatever they are, his reaction to her having a sip of alcohol was appropriate to the situation, and it kind of irritated me. And the double standard and things of that nature, just I didn't like it. So other than that, oh, and there's a trigger for rape, and I only saw that because I saw someone's thing and I was like, oh yes, that's right. So there's a backstory rape, of course, because we have to in these books. So I wasn't thrilled to death with this book, and yet it, because they tried to add some interesting element, I had to give it something for that, even though it wasn't very well executed. I'm not sure when I'm going to get to the next book in this series, but the writing wasn't poor enough that I wouldn't read it at some point. Then I finished The Enchanted April by Elizabeth von Arnim. This was enchanting. I know people say that it's enchanting, like there's no other way to say it. I mean, 4 women with very different backgrounds, very different stories, everything, come and stay in this Italian castle for a month, and it's very interesting. It's very, whether I agreed with some of it as like a more modern woman as opposed to a woman in the 20s, and marriage and how marriage was and things like that, I wasn't necessarily cool with that. But this place, I mean, there's a little bit of magical realism going on here where this castle is magical and fixes everything. And it was adorable. I gave it 4 stars. I'm happy to have it on my shelf. Then I read Waste of Space by Stuart Gibbs. I love Stuart Gibbs. This was a 5-star read for me. This is the 3rd and final book in the Moonbase Alpha trilogy. It is science fiction, and it's middle grade, in case you didn't notice. I love his books. They're so much fun. I don't want to spoil what goes on with this, but needless to say, it is set on the moon. There's people researching on the moon, and there's not a whole lot of people living on this moon base, but mysteries happen. And so they're like, but because they're on the moon, it's science fiction, but they're also very much mysteries, and just funny things happen. And he writes well. He writes very well. Then I read another 5-star book, and it's also a middle grade, and it's the York series by Laura Ruby. This is The Shadow Cipher. She is a fantastic writer. Holy mackerel. Like, okay, so steampunk, but modern day kind of steampunk in an alternate New York City sort of environment, and the kids have to solve this old cipher in order to save their home, and so it's an adventure. And I just got swept away with the whole thing, even though I know the children are the saviors and they're the only ones who figure out the code is kind of sketchy. I get it, but love this book. Loved it. Cannot wait for the next books in the series. I've acquired a flower. You're not just seeing things. Okay. I'm so glad to be filming again. This is so much fun, you guys. Okay. Even though nobody watches, I just love it. Okay. The final book I read was, yes, The Princes of Ireland by Edward Rutherford. This was my beast. Excellent book. I gave it 4 stars. I don't know why I took off a star, because it was actually probably his most easily readable book of the ones that I've read. I've read London and I've read New York. And this one is very easy reading. I think I'm just not into Ireland right now. So I think it's more my problem as opposed to his. But excellent. This covers Irish history from the early Celtic tribes up through when the Princes of Ireland basically were no more anymore, which was approximately 1538 or so, when England really just started putting a hand in there, and the princes were no more. There is a second book. I have it, I don't know, somewhere behind me, because of course I do want to read that one as well this year. I'm just like not into Ireland right now, which is kind of sad because the second one is even bigger than this one. And again, that's my problem, not his. He's excellent. I highly recommend his historical fiction. So we'll see when I get to that. I kind of wanted to read it this month, but it's just not happening this month. I can't do it. I just can't do it. And then this one, I partially listened to audio and I partially read. It was a reread for me, and it is The Masque of the Black Tulip by Lauren Willig. This is the second book in the Secret History of the Pink Carnation series. It's like 11 books long that I'm trying to get to this month. I mean, you're probably sick of hearing me talk about these books. The historical element of this is the romance between Miles and Henrietta, and they're trying to find the Black Tulip, who is not a good spy. This is not a good person right here. Modern day, we have Eloise and Colin. Colin holds the family archives with all this information that has never been released to the public, and their romance is starting to actually be a romance. In the first book, it's like they hate each other, and now we're starting to like each other a little bit. Their romance goes very slowly throughout all 11 books. And I gave this one 5 stars. This one is so funny, and I love to laugh. So this was brain candy at its best. This was better than the first one. Loved it. Highly recommend it if you like your historical romance. She does it very well, and yeah, 5 stars. So May had 3 5-star reads for me, which is unprecedented. Normally I barely give 5-star reads, but I was feeling it this month. And so far in June, I've read a lot of books, none of them 5 stars, but you will see that. I'll film probably in a couple days for that. And it kind of feels good to be done with filming for the day. So I will talk to you later. I hope you're reading something wonderful. Have a lovely weekend, and I will see you again. Bye.